Many years ago, in the beautiful city of Enugu, there lived a man named Chijioke. He was a pastor who pastored the largest church in Enugu. He was a man of God who carried his ministry with humility and grace. He was well respected, not just in his church, but across the entire town of Enugu. But beyond his powerful sermons and his ability to lay hands and cast out demons, there was something very special about him. And it was the way he loved his wife, Amarachi. Amarachi was the love of his life. She was a beautiful, elegant lady who equally loved her husband very much. She was the perfect definition of Mommy G.O. and supported her husband in his ministry. They shared a bond that was enviable. Everyone loved their love. And church members would not stop gushing about how much their pastor loved and adored his wife. They were not just husband and wife, they were best friends, partners in prayer, and parents to a beautiful girl called Adaisi. Their love was the type that made people believe in fairy tales, and a type that only few persons were lucky enough to experience in their lifetimes. Everything was going on just fine for Pastor Chijioke and Amarachi, until one day, Amarachi got a call from home. She was told to come back home to Anambra immediately, as there was a family emergency that needed her attention. Amarachi told her husband about it, but Chijioke was very reluctant. He did not want her to travel. Baby, must you go? Can you not sort out whatever problem it is over the phone? Is it not something that money can solve? You can easily do a transfer. In short, I will send the money to you. Please do not travel. Pastor Chijioke said, looking very worried. But Amarachi reassured her husband, saying, My love, everything cannot be solved with money. And my dad insisted that he wants to see me. I know that he has things that he wants to say to me in person. Besides, it's just for 2 days. I'll be back before you even notice that I am gone. Amarachi said with a bright smile on her face. Okay, oh, but I do not feel good about this journey. I do not like this. Chijioke replied in defeat. Don't worry, my love. God is with me. He will keep me safe. Amarachi reassured her husband lovingly. So the following morning, and with a heavy heart, Chijioke prayed for his wife, asking the Lord to take her to her destination safely. But just as she left the entrance to her parlor and was inside their compound, Amarachi saw 7 dead lizards. She immediately screamed, and her husband, Pastor Chijioke, rushed out. He saw the 7 dead lizards as well and said, My love, this is a very bad omen. I do not think you should travel today. Let us move your trip to tomorrow or even next week, please. Pastor Chijioke said, looking very worried. Ha, ha, my love, it's not that serious now. Besides, when did you become superstitious? Were you not the one who just prayed some firebrand prayers this morning, committing my journey into the hands of the Lord? Pico, stop all this. Let me start going before I miss my boss. Amarachi replied, smiling. So even though Pastor Chijioke was not in support of the trip, he allowed his wife to go. He took her to the bus station and watched as she boarded the bus. He felt very uneasy in his spirit, but little did he know that it was because it was going to be the last time that he would ever see her again in his life. But later that evening, as Pastor Chijioke sat in his study, preparing his sermon for the next Sunday service, he heard a knock on his door. It was his personal assistant, Emeka. Emeka just stood there, shaking and looking very scared. Bia, what is it? Why are you standing and shaking? Did something cut off your tongue? If you have something to say, please say it quickly so that I can return back to my sermon notes. Pastor Chijioke said to Emeka, but Emeka still couldn't say a word as he was very scared and visibly shaking. Sir, it's your wife, Emeka said, stuttering. What is it? What happened to my wife? Emeka, what happened to my wife? Pastor Chijioke asked as he sprung up on his feet, looking very scared. And then Emeka went ahead and narrated how the bus that his wife Amarachi was traveling in had crashed and gone up in flames, and that everyone in it had died. Upon hearing all that Emeka had said, Pastor Chijioke froze. He could no longer hear anything that came out from his mouth. He could not believe it. Amarachi, his own Amarachi, dead. He refused to accept it. He rushed to the accident scene, but everything had been burnt beyond recognition. The police and rescue teams confirmed that no one had made it out alive. Pastor Chijioke immediately broke down in tears. He wept and wailed like a baby. Amarachi, I begged you not to travel. I pleaded with you not to go. Now see how you have left me alone. God, why did you let this happen to me? Have I not served you all my life? Why didn't you keep my wife alive? What will I do without Amarachi, the love of my life? Pastor Chijioke said as he broke down in tears. So in the days that followed, Pastor Chijioke lost his mind. He fell into a deep depression. He cried every day, refused to eat, and locked himself in his prayer room. He could no longer even preach, and his once vibrant sermons had become dull and lifeless. The elders and members of the church pitied him. They knew how much his wife Amarachi meant to him, and so they could understand the depth of his pain and hurt. For 2 good years, Pastor Chijioke mourned his wife. But after a lot of intervention and words of encouragement from the elders of the church and his close friends, most of which were pastors, he was able to get back on his feet. But even at that, a part of him remained broken. Pastor Chijioke resumed again at the church and began to preach, but it was never the same. 2 years later, and the church elders, seeing how their beloved pastor was still struggling, called him for a meeting one day and advised him to remarry, saying, "Pastor, you're still a very young man and you cannot be alone forever. You need a helpmeet, and our church needs a strong family structure. So in other words, you need a wife." One of the elders said, looking very worried. Initially, Pastor Chijioke was hesitant because he had vowed never to remarry or love another woman the way he loved Amarachi. But he understood that the elders meant well for him, thus their advice. So after a while of giving it some thought, he embraced the idea and decided to remarry, not just for the church or himself to prevent him from falling into sexual temptation, but also because he needed a mother figure for his little daughter, Adaeze. So a few months later, and he met a beautiful young lady named Chioma. Chioma was everything that he did not know that he needed. She was warm, kind, patient, and understanding. And slowly, she helped him heal. He started to smile again, and for the first time in years, he felt alive. So a few months after that, and they got married, and soon welcomed a baby boy. Life was beautiful again, and even the church members loved his new wife, Chioma. But there were a few who didn't like her, because they still remained loyal to his dead wife, Amarachi. So they saw Chioma as an intruder. But regardless, Pastor Chijioke was happy and lived happily with his new wife. Meanwhile, somewhere in a small town named Okwachi, there was a beautiful young lady called Nena, who was a seamstress and she was loved by many. But several years ago, this young lady had woken up startled in a small hospital room in Okwachi. She had no memory of how she got there. She could not even remember her own name or how she had gotten to the hospital. The nurse who attended to her simply looked at her and said, "My dear, you are lucky to be alive. A good Samaritan found you unconscious by the roadside and brought you to us. You've been unconscious for the past 3 weeks." The nurse said to her. So that was all that she knew about herself, that a good Samaritan had brought her to the hospital. Nnenna thought long and hard. She tried to recollect who she was, but it was to no avail. So with no name or recollection of her past, and no one to claim her, Mama Ifoma, the kind Samaritan that had brought her to the hospital, took her in and gave her a place to stay. It was also Mama Ifoma that had named her Nnenna, since the lady in question could not recollect her own name. So Mama Ifoma took very good care of Nnenna, hoping that one day she would recollect who she truly was and would be able to reconnect with her family. But 1 year later, and Nnenna could still not remember who she was. So Mama Ifoma called her one day and said, "My dear, you cannot just sit at home waiting for your memory to return. Why not go and learn tailoring so that you would have a skill and be able to provide for yourself? And maybe one day you would meet a handsome good man and you will both get married and start up a family of your own. And then you would have something to use in supporting the home front." Mama Ifoma told Nnenna one early morning. Nnenna thought about it. It was a good idea, so she agreed. After all, she had been trying to remember who she was for the past 1 year and yet could not remember anything. So she could as well forsake her past and start building a life in the present. So that was how she was introduced to Nkiru. Nkiru was a confident fashion-forward designer who owned a shop which she called NK Styles. It was a modern fashion shop which was just a few streets away from Nnenna's house. So Nnenna started learning how to sew with her. And soon enough, Nkiru graduated from just being a tutor to Nnenna to becoming her confident and true friend, one who made her laugh and forget the pain of not knowing who she really was. So Nnenna continued to live her life in peace and quiet for the next 2 years. So one day, she was taking a stroll in the evening when she met this handsome young man whose name was Obinna. They got talking and it was love at first sight for them. And soon enough, they started dating. Obinna was a medical doctor and had fallen head over heels in love with Nnenna, and he wanted to marry her. Nnenna told him about her past and the fact that she had lost her memory and did not know who she truly was. But Obinna did not care. He reassured her that he loved her regardless, saying, "I know you don't remember your past, but I don't care who you were. All I care about is who you are right now," Obinna said, looking at Nnenna lovingly. Nnenna was so happy, and a few days afterwards, they officially started dating. And barely 3 weeks later, Obinna proposed to Nnenna and she agreed to be his wife. They were both happy and wedding plans began earnestly. Mama Ifoma, on the other hand, was overjoyed. She was happy as though she was Nnenna's biological mother, and she teased her endlessly. Nnenna was so happy and grateful to her. But one afternoon, Nnenna was hanging out with her fiancé, Obinna, at an eatery when she heard a voice from a nearby television. She heard a man preaching. His voice was powerful and filled with authority. And immediately, something snapped inside of her. She turned slowly to the screen. The deep commanding voice sounded very familiar. Her heartbeat quickened as she stared at the man on the TV. Then flashes of memories flooded in. A church, a congregation cheering, a man holding her hand, whispering, "You are my world, Amarachi." She remembered a wedding, a beautiful baby girl, giggling as she took her first steps. She remembered a burning bus, screams, pain, and darkness. And Amarachi gasped. She was struggling for breath. All the memories were pouring in too fast and too hard. She saw herself laughing in a home that she did not recognize, but yet it felt familiar. She saw a little girl running to her and calling her mommy. She saw herself standing beside the man on the TV, praying together, holding hands. She saw the man looking at her with love in his eyes and calling her Amarachi. And immediately, it occurred to her that she just remembered who she was. Her name was not Nina. Her name was Amarachi. And she was married to the pastor who was preaching on the television. She remembered what her life looked like. She was a pastor's wife who had a child and was loved at home and in church. She remembered how her husband pleaded with her not to travel. She remembered how when her bus had an accident, she was flung out of the bus and landed very far away, and she watched as her bus caught fire and burnt up in flames before she fainted. She remembered how she woke up in a hospital bed, confused and forgetting who she was. And immediately she began to tremble. She was literally shaking. By this time, her fiancé, Dr. Obina, had noticed her behavior. He stared at her looking very worried. "Nena, Nena, what is wrong?" Dr. Obina called out to her, but she did not respond because she could not hear him. Then she started screaming, "No, no, this can't be real, no." She turned back to the screen, staring at her husband, Pastor Chijioke, her eyes widening in fear. Dr. Obina reached out for her hand. "Nena, talk to me. What is it? You're making me really scared," Obina said, looking very worried. Then Nena, formerly known as Amarachi, slowly turned to him and said, "Obina, I remember that man. He is my husband," Nena said as she pointed at the television screen, tears streaming down her eyes. Obina's expression shifted immediately from confusion to shock. He turned to the TV, then turned back at her. "What? This man, Pastor Chijioke, who does not know Pastor Chijioke, this popular pastor, you're his wife?" Obina asked, 1,000 thoughts racing through his mind. And just like that, Nina's new life collapsed. She knew who she was now. She was Amarachi. And so she knew that she had to reconnect with her past life, her husband, her daughter, everyone that she had left behind. She spoke with Mama Ifoma and told her about everything that she remembered about herself, that her name was Amarachi, and that she had a husband and a daughter. She thanked Mama Ifoma for caring for her all these years and told her that she had to return to her family. They had to know that she was not dead. So few days later, with the help of Mama Ifoma, she found her way back to Enugu. She showed up at the church entrance. Everyone was shocked to see her. Some even fainted, thinking that they had seen a ghost. Others even screamed. And Chioma, Pastor Chijioke's second wife, was not left out. She screamed at the top of her lungs, "Jesus!" Her heart pounding hard. Chijioke's legs began to shake. He immediately ran towards her and held her. He needed to be sure that she was real, that she was not a ghost, that she was flesh and blood. And yes, she was real. Tears began to stream down his face. "Amarachi, Amarachi, is this a dream?" Chijioke said, looking very shocked. And Amarachi, who was already crying at this time, stared at her husband and said, "It is me, my love. I am alive," Amarachi said, and they both hugged themselves tightly. But this became the beginning of the biggest crisis of Pastor Chijioke's life. Both wives were alive, and both wives were legally married to him. And to make matters worse, he loved the both of them. The whole church was thrown into a state of confusion. Members began to take sides. Some of them were saying that Amarachi was his real wife, while the others said that Chioma was the one who stood by him when he was broken, so she was the real wife. Amarachi, on the other hand, moved into her husband's home, and this made Chioma very uncomfortable. Amarachi was so happy to reunite with her daughter Adaeze, who had grown. But she was also uncomfortable that another woman now answered Mrs. Chijioke and slept in the same room that she slept with her husband and lived in a house that she suffered to build with her husband. She did not know how to feel. Pastor Chijioke missed the love of his life and just wanted to spend all his time with her, catching up with her and knowing how her life had been for the past 4 years. But he could not do that because he could see his second wife Chioma staring at him jealously each time he spoke to Amarachi. Pastor Chijioke did not know what to do. For crying out loud, how could a pastor have 2 wives? He thought to himself, looking very worried. His home was no longer peaceful. Instead, his home had become a battlefield of jealousy, arguments, tears, and accusations. So he decided to seek help. So he decided to speak to the elders of the church to ask them what he could do about his current situation. But they too were confused. They did not know what to say to him. Because before God and man, both women, Amarachi and Chioma, were his lawful wives. But the elders suggested that Chijioke should step down as pastor until the situation was resolved. Chijioke still had no answer to the questions in his heart, and his home had become very hot because Chioma and Amarachi were always quarreling over every little thing, and at the slightest provocation, they were fighting for the love of their husband. Chioma would scream at Amarachi and say, "Please go back to wherever you came from. You do not expect me to pack up and leave just because you came back from the dead. I did not steal your husband. I married him as a widower. You were dead. So please go and leave my husband alone." Chioma would shout out angrily, and Amarachi would scream back at her saying, "He is mine, not yours. He is my husband. We were never divorced, never. And even before God, we were never divorced because it's until death do you part. I did not die. Neither did my husband die. So you are the intruder and you are the one that will leave my home. You husband snatcher." Amarachi would scream back angrily at Chioma. They were always fighting and quarreling. Meanwhile, Amarachi, who was formerly called Nina, had cut off all ties with her fiancé in Ukwachi, Dr. Obinna. She wanted her life back. She wanted her husband and daughter back. She wanted a life where she was well respected and where she was wealthy and had influence, not a place where she was a seamstress and living in a remote town. So she vowed that she was going to do everything within her power to make her husband choose her. She cooked delicious meals for him and tried to win him over. So one day, Chioma could not take it any longer. She simply packed up her bags and left. Because from the look of things, she knew that her husband would never pick her over Amarachi. She saw the way her husband looked at Amarachi with so much love in his eyes. She had heard several stories from church members about how close they were and the bond that they once shared. Chioma knew that she could not compete with this. Chioma sat on the edge of her seat, staring blankly at the floor. She felt like she was suffocating. She had fought for this marriage. She had given it everything she had. She had been the perfect wife, perfect mother, perfect pastor's wife. But now she could see the handwriting clearly. There was no place for her here anymore. She was busy filling in a shoe until the owner comes for it. So she made her decision. She was leaving Chijioke and his wife for good. So one day, she walked up to Chijioke and said, "Chijioke, I can't do this anymore. I have tried. I have sacrificed a lot for this marriage. I have done so much to remain in this marriage. But I see now that I was only delaying the inevitable. You love Amarachi, for crying out loud, she was your first love. So I'm busy wasting my time fighting for a man whose heart belongs to another. I do not blame you or Amarachi, your wife. I should have known that I could never replace her because even before she came back, you were always still Amarachi, Amarachi, Amarachi. And I was just trying to, condone it, saying that you're grieving. You lost someone that was very close to you. But now that she's alive, I can't compete with the dead and still compete with the living. I can't do it. So I'm leaving. I'm leaving. I will leave your son with you, but I am done." Chioma said, looking very sad. Chijioke was shocked and broken at the same time. "Chioma, please don't do this. I know things have been difficult of recent, but we can figure it out. It was never my intention to hurt you. You have been there for me at my lowest point. You helped me find joy again, and that means something to me. I do not want you to live like this, feeling unloved or unwanted, or as if I just used and dumped you. I have never wanted to cause you pain. Yes, I cannot deny that I still love my first wife, Amarachi. But that does not mean that I don't love you either. I love you as well. Please understand the dilemma that I am in. Please, Chioma, just hold on. Let's see how we can figure this thing out." Chijioke said, pleading with his wife. But all his words fell on deaf ears. "I have to go, and that is final," Chioma replied as she stood up and left with her bags. Amarachi, on the other hand, stood silently by the door. She had heard every single thing that Chioma had said to her husband. But she did not speak. She had nothing to say. She had won, yes, but she did not feel happy. Instead, she felt sad, as if she had robbed Chioma and done her bad. For crying out loud, Chioma did not know that she was alive. But then again, Chijioke could marry only one wife, and it had to be her. So she just let it slide. But unfortunately, as Chioma traveled down to Lagos to her sister's house by bus, she had a fatal accident and died on the spot. When the news was broken to Pastor Chijioke and his wife, they both broke down in tears, crying and weeping profusely. They felt very guilty and responsible for her death. And a few weeks later, Chioma was laid to rest. Her burial ceremony was a small and quiet one. Chioma's family were present and were very upset with Chijioke. At the burial, the whole air was thick with resentment and blame. Some church members were whispering among themselves. They looked at their pastor and his first wife, Amarachi, with accusing eyes. Even though they could not say it loud, but they blamed them for Chioma's death. Pastor Chijioke and Amarachi were broken. They did not mean to hurt Chioma, but she died regardless. So they continued to live together as husband and wife. Their marriage was restored, but at the cost of Chioma's life. And not just that, the elders of the church told Pastor Chijioke to step down completely because of all the resentment that most of the church members had built against him because they blamed them for Chioma's death. Hi, bestie! It's your favorite storyteller, Omalicha. Thank you so much for watching my story to the end. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on this one. In short, I have a lot of questions to ask. First off, do you believe in superstitions? Like, if you were in Amarachi's shoes, the day you want to travel and you see 7 dead lizards just in front of your door, would you still have made that trip? Would you still have traveled? Then secondly, how do you think this case should have been handled? Like, should Chijioke have stuck to his new wife Chioma, or should he have still accepted Amarachi and be married to the two of them at once? Should Amarachi have just forgotten Chijioke and moved on with the new man that she had found who loved her the way she was? How do you think this whole issue should have played out? What advice would you have given them? Please share them with me in the comment section. And please support your homegirl, Omalicha, by subscribing to my channel, liking my videos, and sharing with your loved ones. So now, till I come your way again with more interesting stories, bye!